What is Psyonix and Rocket League bringing to E3 this week?
Well, the big focus obviously is Radical Summer, which kicks off today, and that's essentially a love letter to the 1980s. We have a whole bunch of really cool content in there. It's a 9-week event starting today, goes all the way until August 12th, and we split it up into 3 different phases: 80s blockbusters, 80s culture, and 80s television. And each one is kind of anchored by a different really cool thing. So 80s blockbusters, we're revealing Ecto 1 that you can buy as DLC, along with a brand new game mode based on Ghostbusters called Ghost Hunt, which is a really cool way to play the game where you actually have to bring the ball into a trap instead of putting it into a goal. And then our anniversary, our 4-year anniversary, is something we celebrate every year, and that's the second phase. It starts on July 1st. That's when we introduce Spike Rush mode, which is also really cool. That's essentially our version of rugby. If Rocket League is soccer, this is the rugby version.
That's pretty sweet.
And then we're finishing off with the beach ball mode on the last 3 weeks, where the physics change, and it's just another way to enjoy Rocket League in a slightly different way, but we think that the audiences will really like it, and so far in the first few hours, they've been really happy.
That's exciting to say the least. But, you know, 80s, right? It feels like everyone's been sort of on an 80s wave recently.
Yeah.
So what is the thought behind this, right? You guys wanted to cash in on it, or is like you really had some creative ideas?
No, it's not about cashing in on it. We love the 80s. I grew up in the 80s, the whole decade, and I remember it all. That gives away how old I am. But it's the 80s right now are important to a lot of people because folks who are parents right now grew up in the 80s or maybe the early part of the 90s, and kids right now are seeing a lot of things that are being brought back, like Voltron and She-Ra. Stranger Things celebrates the 1980s. Wonder Woman next year is taking place in 1984. So from our perspective, it's all about taking something that everyone is really feeling at the same time and celebrating that in Rocket League. We didn't want to do anything kitschy or make fun of it. We wanted to celebrate it, and that was the whole goal.
Yeah, and celebrating and also bringing back, you guys have your new DLC packs that include the Ghostbusters car and also Knight Rider. And these are some iconic 80s pop culture cars. So why did you guys pick those ones specifically? Because, I mean, there are some other additional, like, iconic cars or iconic vehicles within the 80s and et cetera, but why those two specifically?
Well, I mean, the number one reason is because our fans were asking for them. They've been asking for 4 years, ever since we put in the DeLorean about 4 years ago. They're like, what about this? What about that? And at the top of the list was Ecto 1 and Kit from Knight Rider. And we're always trying to find the best way to integrate those in a way that was not only a celebratory of the cars themselves, but also just could elevate it to the biggest way possible. And when we noticed that not only were these cars iconic in the 80s, but so too were some of the other things we wanted to do. It made perfect sense to put it all together.
A perfect blend, right? So you're talking about 4 years of Rocket League. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
So I'm blanking on the name currently, but what was it called before it was called Rocket League again?
Well, the original game was called Supersonic Acrobatic Rocket Powered Battle Cars.
Yes.
Whoa.
So,
we actually we changed it for obvious reasons, but some of them included it. The full title wouldn't fit in some of the stores, even in the back end. So we were like, we need a much shorter title. Rocket League also, I think, sounds a little bit more competitive, which the game definitely is. And that's what we wanted to lean into.
Right. 4 years, right, of development, of change, of growth, of massive growth. I want to say you guys have partnered with Play Versus, incorporated into so many leagues nationwide, picked up by Epic Games. It's been insane. So how has the game itself and the fandom changed since it was released?
Well, that's the tricky part. Whenever you have any esport, particularly a game like Rocket League, where the core of the game is so important to keep right, we can't really change the game. It has to remain exactly the way it is in some sense, so that players who have been with us since the beginning can still feel comfortable, and that we're not changing the game in a way that alters how they play or the way that people strategize. Exactly. On the flip side, we have nearly 60 million lifetime players now, and people are looking for other ways to enjoy the game. So we have to find the right balance of keeping the competitive core set happy by adding more additive features, things that allow you to enjoy watching the broadcast more with more replay features, balanced with some of the things like our mini game modes, like Ghost Hunt and Spike Rush, that the mainstream could appreciate and maybe introduce them to Rocket League, whereas before they may be a little bit intimidated by the very competitive scene that Rocket League has.
Very competitive scene. People get crazy in that game.
Oh yeah, and we get challenged, I'd say, on a daily basis at Psyonix, because people just want to see how good the makers of the game are. That's how competitive our audience is. And this is by like bronze level people. Like, let's see how good you are. And the higher you go up, the more and more competitive people get. And we want to feed that as much as possible.
What is the feeling, though, like creating a game and then having people play it and then being better than you could ever imagine? Because I know, like Novi, right? You talk about some of the best players in the world. You're just like, I could never do that.
It's actually incredibly satisfying because when we designed Rocket League and we were releasing it, it was everything that we learned from Supersonic Acrobatic Rocket Power Battle Cars. And we took that to the next level, but we also wanted to make sure that we weren't alienating anyone, but we were bringing people in new who maybe didn't see it the first time. And when it blew up the way it did, and people started doing things that we never even thought were possible, flip resets, for example. We didn't design the game with flip resets in mind. And turtling and all the other strategies that people have come up with over the years, that is the most satisfying thing in the world because that's what they call in the business, emergent gameplay. But it shows you that the bones of the game are really good, and it's up to the players to make it better. And we're just really happy about it.
Indeed, and then I know we're in the E3 week, but I got to ask because you talked about strategy and broadcasting. We see a lot of those interesting tricks within competition. You guys have the Rocket League World Championship coming up. I don't know how much info you can give us, but what can fans expect from watching this?
It's going to be our biggest RLCS ever. It's Season 7. It's in Newark, New Jersey. It's next week, the 21st to the 23rd. That's June, in case anyone's watching this in replay. And we've already sold more tickets than we've ever sold before. It's the first time we've introduced South American teams. We have 12 total teams coming in to South America, to Oceania, and then the rest are from North America and Europe. And it's really competitive. And we've had a lot of shockers just leading up to this point. So it's anybody's game. And I think a lot of people want to see just how far the new teams, in particular South America, can go now that they're taking on world-class competition.
That fan base is so passionate, too. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be really fun.
Yeah, well, congrats to you guys for your mark. Thank you so much for coming on our show to talk a little bit about Rocket League. All right, guys, so Rocket League's Radical Summer event starts today, goes through August 12th. For more info, go to rocketleague.com.